Wap is in such a weird spot with his career. And I say this because the man went from having $22 million in the bank to having to resort to selling dope to pay his bills because he lost it all. And I mean, he was selling so much, it landed him in prison with a 6-year sentence. But this story really go back years. Back to when the man was starting to blow up. Back, 10 years ago now? Fetty Wap was this huge new artist. He blew up onto the scene with all this good music, and you really couldn't get away from him. For years and years, maybe 3-4 years, you really was always hearing Fetty Wap. He always had some hit song out, and you was always just gonna be messing with Fetty Wap. And for a minute, people was thinking, oh, is this the next big artist? Like, is he really here to stay? Do we really have somebody else in this music space making good, consistent music? And for some years, that was him. Until it started to slow down. Like I said, he always had these big songs, but eventually it all stopped. And a sign that something wasn't looking right for this man was just a few years in his career, he was always in a lawsuit, or he was always on somebody's money, or he was always getting sued for something. And a big example of this was in 2016 when Fetty ended up catching a lawsuit for his hit song Trap Queen, the one that put him on the map. The story basically went like this. There's this rapper named Laser, and he was claiming that he originally bought the Trap Queen beat before Fetty Wap. He went up to the producer, Tony Fad. He gave him the money. He claims that he bought the rights to this beats, but Fetty Wap used it for Trap Queen anyway and made a smash hit out of it. According to TMZ, a Danish songwriter says he has exclusive rights to the instrumental, and as a result, is suing Fetty. Laser claims that he produced the Hello beat from producer Tony Fad prior to Fad sampling the instrumental for Trap Queen. According to Laser's lawsuit, Fad attempted to buy back the rights for the beat in January 2015 after Trap Queen was released. According to TMZ, Fetty's attorney, Navarro Gray, says Fetty legally bought the beat from Fad. And Fetty Wap has the contract to prove everything. Gray also explains that if Laser is awarded damages for the lawsuit, Fetty is going to ask Fad to cover it. In addition to suing for damages, Laser was also attempting to have all copies of Trap Queen destroyed and all sales of Trap Queen stopped. But remember what I said though, even though Fetty Wap had this lawsuit behind him, it was more on the way. A whole nother lawsuit that came at him at this time was he was getting sued by somebody he was cool with, a man that he used to be in the studio with, a man named P. Dice. P. Dice was a part of Fetty Wap's group that was called Remy Boys at the time. Remy Boys had Fetty Wap, it had some of his other homeboys in it, and that was basically his little crew, right? P. Dice was trying to sue Fetty Wap for writing credits on his song 679. And the lawsuit was kind of stupid, but it was there, so I gotta speak on it. So P. Dice and Fetty Wap was in the studio one night. Fetty Wap makes 679. P. Dice claims that, oh yeah, he wrote some of the lyrics, he laid some vocals down, but it all got took off the song before it could release. But not only did his verse get took out the song and he got kicked out the Remy Boys group, he also claimed that Fetty Wap verbally told him, a verbal agreement saying that he would specifically get 16.9% of the profit. P. Dice just feel like they did all of that so he wouldn't get no money off the track. And you know, this case is still going on to this day. Back in 2022, P. Dice was still trying to get some bread off the situation. He was claiming that Fetty Wap had offered him $1 million for the situation, but he denied. Hot New Hip Hop wrote this. P. Dice is a former member of Remy Boys who was featured on the original version of smash hit 679. Though he was kicked out the group before the release, the 679 song still ended up on Fetty Wap's album, which was released in September, featuring just Fetty and Monty, the only two current Remy Boys. At the end of last month, it was reported that P. Dice was suing Fetty over the song that he got removed from. He thinks his former crewmate owes him upwards of $7 million. P. Dice is now alleged Fetty tried to slide him $1 million, but he denied. But you know, even though he didn't pay up none of that money to that man, and I don't think he should have. I mean, you saying it was a verbal agreement. If you really wanted some money off of this song, why the hell would you say a verbal agreement? You should have told Fetty, pull out that contract, let's sign it. But saying that he was specifically going to give you 16.9% as a verbal agreement with no proof, it's not, you're not going to win that one. But anyway, past that, even though he was in debt to these niggas and he had the whole Trap Queen lawsuit going on, the man was still making money. He was making too much money. And you know, all of this money would really be Fetty Wap's downfall he was making all of this money, but he really didn't know what he was doing with it. Like I said at the start of the video, he was making 20 million at one point. He said he looked in his bank account and he seen 20 million, but there was a problem. He was making all this money and spending it just as fast as he was getting it. Fetty Wap was blowing it back. He said himself that there was a point in time where he was paying almost $200,000 a month in bills. He said that he didn't really like going to hotels. Fetty said he was not a hotel type because he felt like it was unsafe. He didn't like the idea that anybody could just walk up to his door, knock on it, and see what he's doing. So instead of him just getting hotels whenever he needed it, he would start getting all these apartments. He was having an apartment here in one city. He said he had multiple apartments in Jersey. He had multiple apartments in LA. He said he had apartments in Miami. The nigga had apartments everywhere. So think about how much rent he was paying, especially when you think about LA and how expensive doing anything there is. All of that adding up, all of them bills, all of that rent was adding up, right? But it keeps getting worse. Not only was he paying almost $200K in rent and just bills, he also had $10,000 a month in car insurance. He would go out and get all these cars, and instead of just letting them sit, he would put car insurance on all of them. So he paying for dozens of cars car insurance. But not only that, then wasting even more money. Fetty Wap blew up, and he wasn't just a rapper that rolled around with maybe 2-3 people. He was rolling around with 10, 20, 30, 40 niggas with him. So think about it. He rolling with all these people. They probably all from the hood with him. They probably don't got no money. So Fetty Wap, he got to catch a flight. He buying 20, 30 flights. He got to get something to eat. He buying 20, 30 meals. He want to go in the store and buy some designer clothes. He getting 20, 30 different pairs of clothes. He said there was times where he was going to buy designer clothes and he spending 40K, 45K on just jeans because he getting everybody a pair. He said he only wearing one pair, but he getting all these different pairs of clothes because everybody else that's with him. And for a while, that's how he was living. He was just blowing that money. He didn't really understand how much he was making, and he didn't really understand how much he was spending. But all of that changed when he would start to look into his bills and start to look at how much money he was spending. He was like, damn, like, what am I doing? He started to slim everything down, and that's when he really started to realize how the people around him really acted, how they really felt. He fell into a trap that other artists fall into, and there's probably plenty of artists that you listen to that don't even know that they fall into this trap. Niggas don't be understanding financials. A lot of people, they come into this rap space, they probably from the hood, they don't really have no financial literacy. They don't really understand these finances. They don't understand how to save this money or turn it into more money outside of street activities. And I hate to say it, but Fetty Wap was one of them niggas. He would just so happen to know how to run the streets. And instead of him trying to turn his career around, maybe get a brand deal or work with a company to get some money, maybe start a TV show, anything, he turned to the streets. He started moving dope. And so when his profits turned down, he just so happened to turn to something you wouldn't really expect a huge rapper to turn into. You gotta really understand, Fetty Wap was a rapper with multiple platinum singles. Fetty Wap had a diamond song. Not many rappers have diamond singles, let alone artists in the whole of music have diamond singles. Barely any artist really had that. He done made a lot of money. So when this next part of his life became public, people were really surprised. If you go back a couple years of 2021, Fetty Wap was randomly arrested by the FBI. And at the time, nobody was really expecting this at all. So when it did, it caught everybody off guard because these wasn't no regular charges. He was moving a lot of dope around. In legal documents obtained by HSL from the Department of Justice, Fetty and 5 other individuals have been indicted on charges on conspiring to distribute and possess controlled substances. 5 of the defendants also faced firearm charges. Between June 2019 and June of 2020, the crew is said to have distributed and sold more than 100 kilos of deadly and addictive drugs, including fentanyl, from all throughout Long Island, New York, and New Jersey, allegedly obtaining drugs from the West Coast. They said they used the U.S. Postal Service and drivers with hidden vehicle compartments to transport more than 100 kilos of these drugs across the country. The investigation into the alleged ring reportedly yielded $1.5 million in cash, 16 kilos of coke, 2 kilos of heroin, pills, guns, rifles, ammo. All 6 defendants are currently in custody and face a maximum of life in prison if convicted. According to the investigation, the alleged drug ring stretched across the U.S. The case was aided by the Long Island Gang Task Force. The pipeline of drugs in this investigation ran thousands of miles from West Coast to the communities here in our area, contributing to the addiction and overdose epidemic we have seen time and time again tear people's life apart. Stated by the FBI assistant director in charge. Really thinking about what I just read to you. Fetty Wap, diamond artist. Fetty Wap has a diamond single. Fetty Wap had years and years and years of hits behind him. He had $20 million at his bank account at one point, and he blew it all. And he resorted to basically becoming a drug kingpin. The nigga had USPS. He had US Postal Service serving for him. Niggas had hidden compartments in the truck. Like, this sound like something out of a movie. He really had them moving from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast. And when this news came out, people was like, damn, Fetty Wap is done. It ain't no coming back from this. But even though Fetty Wap got arrested on all of that, all of them charges, he did get a bond. He got a $500,000 bond. He got lucky as hell. I mean, he got that young boy Kodak Black treatment. Them the only two artists I could think of that get bond no matter what they do. But Fetty ended up getting bond, but the way he lost it was really stupid. So when everything went down, he pled not guilty. They gave him bond until trial. And these were his bond conditions. CNN wrote this. He pled not guilty and was released on a $500,000 bond until he awaited trial. And one of the conditions listed on his release order stated that he must not possess a firearm, destructive device, or other weapon. Another said he must not violate any federal, state, or local law. And for a while, the bond was all good until he broke it in December 2021 after he just got bond a couple months earlier. He was on FaceTime with somebody, right? And Fetty Wap was talking a little crazy, but it wasn't just talk. Fetty Wap had his face in the camera, waving a gun around in the camera, threatening to kill a man, calling him a snitch, calling him this, talking about he gonna kill him, with his face in the camera. After he just got bond that said he cannot have no weapon, he cannot do none of this dumb shit. But he did it. And guess what? The man was recording the whole conversation. Prosecutors accused Fetty Wap of violating these conditions during the December 11th FaceTime call where he was allegedly seen holding a gun and threatening to kill an unarmed man. Fast forward, 2022, a couple months after he got this bond, they put him right back in that cell. And he sat and waited until it was time for him to get charged. And when time did come for him to get charged, his attorney was really trying to pull everything he could. He was saying that the man was really serving all these drugs was because of. Keep in mind, Fetty Wap's career was already slowed down. It had already slowed down. He hadn't had a hit song in years leading up to 2020. He was probably surviving off some performances. He was probably just getting performances at Rolling Loud or doing little festivals here, doing club shows. And that's probably how he was living. But when around and you couldn't do shows no more, he had nothing to turn to. And his attorney was saying that's why he resorted to the drugs, because he had to take care of his family, but he couldn't keep continuing his career how it was going. He had no shows to do. He had no performances. He had no streaming income because everything was shut down. XXL wrote this. Fetty Wap's attorney was speaking on the behalf of Fetty Wap and said this to the judge. In documents from the court, the rapper's attorney explains that the pandemic was what jump-started Fetty's life of crime. And she said in or about 2020, with the coming of the worldwide pandemic, things began to change for Mr. Fetty Wap. There were no opportunities to perform, thus his income was severely limited. Fetty Wap's attorney writes he was sued personally while going through a divorce and was involved with a tour manager who was stealing from him while the bills kept coming in. The money to pay them was running out. And about that same time, Fetty Wap lost some of his grandparents and several people that were close to him. The letter continues. Depression and panic began to set in as Fetty took enormous pride in his ability to provide for his children and lend support to other family members. He's described as a people pleaser and a person who gains great satisfaction from taking care of others. Suddenly, it felt like his life was going to reverse, and he became ashamed when he began to struggle to keep up the lifestyle that he created for so many. His judgment became impaired. Desperate to keep up with his financial obligations, he became involved in an instant offense for a few months of the spring of 2020. But all of this ended with him getting sentenced to 6 years in prison over the drug trafficking case. And if we're being honest, he really got lucky, because somebody else would have got probably max penalty. You are bringing drugs from the West Coast to the East Coast through USPS. But like I said, he got lucky, and that was years ago that he got sentenced to 6 years. And even though he has been in jail and got a couple years left, that don't mean his whole career done died down. It's kind of been revived a little bit. See, Fetty has a large catalog of music from back in the day. Like I said, Fetty Wap had a lot of hit songs. And over the past few months, in 2025, his old music been randomly picking back up with all these trends and memes that's been popping up on TikTok and Twitter. And I mean, his music was getting so many streams, his songs was at the top of the Apple Music charts. Like, I remember sometime last month, I had checked the Apple Music charts. Fetty Wap's song was in like the top 20. His label ain't wasting no time. During this whole trend, they capitalized on it. They got right on his Apple Music and they re-released a lot of his old songs under the title Feel Like It's 2015 Again. So what's next for Fetty Wap? I mean, he is in jail, but when he gets out, how are people gonna feel about him? 6 years with no Fetty Wap when his career wasn't hot, it's gonna be bad for him, but I don't know. It was just a real interesting case. The man really fell from grace. He lost 22 million. He had 22 million in his bank account and he lost it all and went to serving drugs. I don't know, there was so much that you could have did different during that time. You could have moved that money so crazy. He could have really been up off 22 million. But this life you live and you learn, and all of the situations ended up with him getting 6 years in prison. Another rapper whose career ain't been hitting the same either is Roddy Ricch. Roddy Ricch had a diamond single too, but instead of turning to drugs, his career just slowed down. He just stopped feeding the fans. For years and years, he would starve his fans with no music, and it hurt him so bad at the end. If you want to find out what happened to Roddy Ricch, click the video on screen right now.